The night Marcus Cole watched a $3.4 million Bugatti Chiron pull into his own driveway, he did something no one who had ever dismissed him as quiet, dull, or forgettable would have expected. He smiled. Not the broken, desperate smile of a man watching his world collapse, but the slow, certain smile of a man who had just watched a trap close. Because that car, that midnight blue, polished-to-mirror perfection Bugatti Chiron with the personalized plates that read DRKTWR1, Marcus Cole had personally authorized that rental. He had approved the insurance rider. He had signed off on the delivery detail. His name was on every line of that contract, tucked inside a company his wife of 14 years had no idea existed. The man stepping out of it now, straightening his cuffs, looking up at Marcus's house like he owned it, he had no idea who he was actually dealing with. And what happened next would cost him everything he had ever built. Before we continue, if you're new here, subscribe right now, and drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. In my next video, I'll be giving personal shoutouts to a few new subscribers, and yours could be the one I read on camera. Today, I want to welcome Christopher Robinson from Boynton Beach, Florida, Lydia from South Africa, and Nancy from Jamaica. Thank you for joining us. Subscribe now and comment below so I can welcome you too. Marcus Cole had spent most of his adult life being invisible, and he had worked very, very hard to get there. At 44 years old, he drove a 2017 Ford Fusion the color of wet concrete. He wore the same rotation of 5 button-down shirts. He ate lunch at his desk every single day, turkey on wheat, apple, water bottle he refilled from the break room sink. His co-workers at the accounting firm where he kept a part-time consulting position thought he was a quiet, slightly boring man who asked good questions about spreadsheets and went home to a quiet, slightly boring life. They were not entirely wrong. He did go home. He did keep it quiet. But what none of them knew, what nobody in his personal orbit had been allowed to know, was that Marcus Cole owned Obsidian Prestige Rentals, the most exclusive luxury car rental company between Chicago and Indianapolis. A company with a fleet of 41 vehicles, including 4 Rolls-Royces, 3 Lamborghinis, a McLaren 720S, 2 Bentleys, and, the crown jewel, a single Bugatti Chiron that corporate clients, athletes, and executives paid between $22,000 and $28,000 per week to borrow. Obsidian Prestige had generated $4.1 million in revenue the previous year. Marcus had built it alone. Quietly. With the same patience his grandfather had used to build furniture in a small workshop in Evansville, Indiana, one careful joint at a time, never rushing, never showing the piece until it was finished. His grandfather's philosophy lived in Marcus's chest like a compass, a man who shows you everything he has gives you everything you need to take it. So Marcus showed almost nothing. He and Diane had been married 14 years. They had a 4-bedroom house in a good school district, a golden retriever named Biscuit, and the kind of comfortable distance that long marriages sometimes develop, 2 people who had stopped really looking at each other somewhere around year 9. Marcus had noticed the drift. He had tried, in small ways, to address it. Weekend trips she never seemed enthusiastic about. A cooking class they attended twice. Anniversary dinners where she mostly talked about her yoga instructor's upcoming retreat. He had told himself it was the natural tide of marriage. That every couple ebbed and flowed. That the loyalty and history between them was a foundation that didn't require daily reinforcement. He had been so certain of that belief that he hadn't questioned it in years. That certainty was about to become the most expensive mistake of his life. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday in March, and Marcus almost missed it entirely. He had come home early from a client call that cancelled. The house was quiet, Diane's car in the garage, no music playing, no television. He'd assumed she was napping. He'd set his laptop bag in the office, poured a glass of water, and noticed her phone sitting face up on the kitchen island. A text notification glowed on the screen. He hadn't meant to read it. He had glanced at it reflexively, the way anyone does when a lit screen catches their eye in a dim room. Can't stop thinking about Sunday. You're incredible. The name above the message read, Derek W. Marcus stood at the kitchen counter for a long, careful moment. He set his water glass down. He walked to his office. He sat in his chair. And for the next 45 minutes, he did not move, did not speak, did not reach for his phone or his laptop or any of the things that normally filled his hands. He simply sat, and thought, and let the information settle into every corner of his understanding. A lesser man might have burst into the bedroom right then. Might have picked up her phone, read every message, gone to war in his own kitchen before he had a single fact beyond a first name and 2 sentences. Marcus Cole was not a lesser man. He had built a $4 million company without anyone noticing. He could certainly build a complete picture before he moved a single piece. When Diane came downstairs 30 minutes later, her hair still damp from what was apparently a shower rather than a nap, she found Marcus at the stove making pasta. "Didn't hear you come in," she said, reaching past him for a glass. "Got back early," he said. "Thought I'd cook." She smiled, an easy, uncomplicated smile, and poured herself some wine. He watched her reflection in the dark kitchen window and understood, she felt completely safe. Good, he thought. Let her. The folder on Marcus's laptop was named, simply, March. He created it the night after he saw the text. He had always been a man of systems. In his 20s, when he was still working as an automotive financial analyst, he had learned that the difference between a successful deal and a catastrophic one almost always came down to documentation. Who had the records? Who had the dates? Who had been patient enough to build the full picture before anyone else knew a picture was being assembled? He applied that discipline now. He started with what he knew, a name. Derek W. He pulled Diane's LinkedIn connections. She'd always kept her profile public, a habit from her marketing career. He searched for Derek. There were 3 within a reasonable distance. He eliminated 2 quickly. One was 68 and lived in Phoenix, one was Diane's former college classmate who was openly married and had just posted a photo of his twins. The third was Derek Warren. 41 years old. Director of Business Development at Crestview Capital Partners, a mid-sized real estate investment firm based downtown. His profile photo showed a handsome man in a charcoal suit, the kind of photo that had been professionally taken and carefully chosen. Confident eyes. Strong jaw. The look of a man who had decided early in life that his appearance was an asset and had invested accordingly. Marcus looked at the photo for a long time. Then he opened the Obsidian Prestige client database. The search took 11 seconds. Derek Warren. Crestview Capital Partners. His company had rented from Obsidian Prestige 4 times in the previous 18 months. A Bentley Continental, twice. A Lamborghini Urus. And, Marcus felt something tighten in his chest, the McLaren 720S. The previous September, the weekend Marcus had been in Nashville attending a fleet supplier conference. He opened the rental agreements one by one. Every pickup was between 6 o'clock and 7:30 in the evening. Every rental listed client entertainment as the business purpose. Everyone had been paid on a Crestview Capital corporate card. Marcus created a subfolder and moved the files into it. He labeled it Derek Warren, Obsidian Records. Then he opened his personal travel calendar and began matching dates. Nashville, September. Derek rented the McLaren. Houston, November. Derek rented the Bentley. Atlanta, January. Derek rented the Bentley again. Columbus, February. The Lamborghini. Every single rental corresponded to a weekend Marcus had been out of town. He leaned back in his office chair and stared at the ceiling for a long moment. The house was dark except for his desk lamp, and Biscuit was asleep on the rug near the door, twitching softly through some private dream. The mathematics of what he was looking at were clean and brutal. This had not been spontaneous. This had been scheduled. Planned. Coordinated around his absence with the kind of precision that suggested not passion, but habit. Not an accident of feeling, but an arrangement. He had a type for people like that, organized. In business, he respected it. In a marriage, it meant something different entirely. He picked up his phone and called his attorney. Raymond Stokes had been Marcus's personal legal counsel since Obsidian Prestige's second year of operation. He was 62, gray-haired, deeply unshockable, and the kind of lawyer who answered calls on weekday evenings because he understood that real problems didn't wait for office hours. Marcus. Raymond's voice was calm, the way a good doctor's voice is calm. What time is it? 9:40. All right. Talk to me. Marcus talked. He kept it clean and sequential, the way he always presented information, what he knew, what he suspected, what he had confirmed, what he needed. When he finished, Raymond was quiet for 3 seconds. You want a full asset audit, Raymond said. Everything joint, everything she has access to, anything that might have moved. Yes. And the Obsidian situation, the rentals, you want that documented separately. Yes. I want it clean. Separate files. I can have someone start Monday. Another pause. Marcus, how long do you think this has been going on? Marcus looked at the first date in his rental records. 18 months ago. The Bentley Continental, Memorial Day weekend, while he was visiting fleet partners in Phoenix. Long enough, he said. He ended the call and returned to his screen. He added a new section to the folder, Raymond, Legal. He noted the call, the date, the time, and the instruction given. Then he opened a fresh document and began writing down everything he remembered about the previous 18 months of his marriage. He wrote for 2 hours. When he finally stopped, he looked at what he'd produced, 23 pages of quiet, careful memory, and understood something important: there had been signs. Not dramatic ones. Not movie-style clues that he had foolishly ignored. Just the slow, gradual withdrawal of someone who was finding her warmth somewhere else. Shorter conversations. Less curiosity about his days. A new gym membership 14 months ago that she went to every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, sometimes Sunday. Sunday, he thought. Can't stop thinking about Sunday. He saved the document. Closed the laptop. Sat in the dark for a while longer. Then he went upstairs, slid carefully into his side of the bed, and listened to Diane breathe, easy, unbothered, completely at peace. He lay very still, eyes open in the dark. The next move would take time. He was comfortable with time. He had been building things in silence for 2 decades. He knew how to wait. 6 weeks passed. On the surface, Marcus Cole's life continued exactly as it always had. He went to the office. He consulted on accounts. He came home. He cooked dinner 3 nights a week, something he had always done and which Diane seemed to appreciate in the way that people appreciate things they've stopped really noticing. He walked Biscuit. He attended his friend Jerome's birthday dinner. He watched basketball on Saturday afternoons, and when Diane asked if he wanted to join her Sunday yoga class, she had started going to a studio, she said, switching from her home practice. He said he'd think about it. He knew she wasn't going to yoga. He did not say this. He noted it in the folder. He kept cooking dinner and walking the dog and doing all the things that made him, in Diane's estimation, safely predictable. Meanwhile, quietly, methodically, his picture grew sharper. Raymond's asset audit came back in 3 weeks. The findings were, in Raymond's word, illuminating. Over 22 months, Diane had made 114 withdrawals from their joint checking account, all between $200 and $450, small enough to avoid triggering any alert, frequent enough to accumulate into $31,000. The money had been routed through a personal savings account Marcus hadn't known existed, opened at a branch of a regional bank across town. Current balance, $26,400. The remaining $4,600 had been spent on what, Raymond's forensic accountant had been able to partially determine: clothing purchases, 2 spa weekends, and, this one landed hard, for hotel charges at the same downtown property, all on weekends Marcus had been traveling for business. Raymond had also uncovered something else. A credit card Marcus had never seen, applied for in Diane's name only, with a $15,000 limit. Balance, $11,200. Charges dating back 14 months. Marcus had sat in Raymond's office with that statement in his hands and felt the specific cold of a man who understands he has been systematically deceived by someone who loved him, once, and had decided to stop. He'd thanked Raymond, asked him to prepare the filing documents but hold them, and driven home in the Ford Fusion. He had not confronted Diane. Not yet. The picture needed one more element before it was complete. That element arrived on a Friday evening in late April. Marcus was working from his home office when his operations manager, a sharp, efficient woman named Celeste who ran the day-to-day at Obsidian Prestige with the organized intensity of a military supply chain coordinator, sent him a flagged notification. Their highest-tier rental request. The Bugatti Chiron. Marcus kept only one on the fleet. He had purchased it 18 months ago from a collector in Scottsdale, a left-hand drive, W16 engine, 1,479 horsepower, midnight blue exterior with a hand-stitched interior the color of aged cognac. It was the most expensive car he had ever purchased and, by a wide margin, the most profitable single asset in his fleet. Weekend rate, $22,000. Full week, $28,000. Delivery and pickup fee, detailing, full insurance, all in, a typical Bugatti rental generated between $24,000 and $31,000. He clicked to see the booking details. Client, Derek Warren. Crestview Capital Partners. Full weekend rental, Friday delivery through Monday morning pickup. Corporate card on file. Note, requesting door delivery to residential address. Client's preference. Marcus read the address. Then he read it again. The delivery address Derek Warren had entered, the residential address where he had requested his $3.4 million Bugatti to be delivered, was Marcus Cole's home. Marcus's house. His street. His driveway. For a long moment, he did not move. Then, with very steady hands, he typed Celeste a response. Approve the booking. Full rate, no upgrades or discounts. Deliver Friday at 7 p.m. Standard handoff protocol. No note from ownership. Confirm driver leaves immediately after handoff. He pressed send. He stood up, walked to the kitchen, and drank a full glass of water. Then he walked back to his office and did something he almost never did in the middle of a workday. He closed his laptop, leaned back in his chair, and allowed himself a long, unhurried moment of clarity. Derek Warren had been renting Marcus Cole's cars to take Marcus Cole's wife on dates, charging those rentals to his company account as business expenses, and now he had requested that Marcus Cole's most valuable asset be delivered to Marcus Cole's own home, because he felt that comfortable. Because he had decided that Marcus was no threat. Marcus thought about his grandfather's workshop. The way a dovetail joint worked, each notch cut so precisely that the pieces locked together without glue, without nails, without anything visible holding them. The strength wasn't in any single part. It was in the complete fit, the full assembly, all pieces present and correctly placed. He had been cutting the joints for 6 weeks. Friday evening, they would fit together. But Marcus Cole didn't do what anyone would have expected. He didn't cancel the booking. He didn't call the police. He didn't call Derek Warren's office. He didn't do any of the things a man in his position would normally do. What he did instead would change the lives of 4 people permanently, and the first person it would reach wasn't Derek Warren. It wasn't even Diane. It was Derek Warren's business partner. Gregory Osei had built Crestview Capital Partners from a 2-man shop operating out of a rented office above a dry cleaner in 2009 into one of the more respected mid-sized real estate investment firms in the region. He was 56, measured, Ghanaian American, a man who read annual reports the way other men read novels and who had an almost forensic sense for when numbers weren't adding up. For the past 8 months, something at Crestview had not been adding up. The entertainment expense line had nearly doubled year over year. Client development costs were running 40% above projection. And every time Gregory asked Derek for a breakdown, Derek produced explanations that were technically coherent but somehow never fully answered the question. Client dinners. Networking events. Relationship investments. You know how it is in this business, Greg. You have to spend to earn. Gregory did know how it was in this business. He had been in it longer than Derek. And he knew that $89,000 in entertainment expenses in a single year, for a mid-sized firm with a defined client roster, did not produce results commensurate with spending. He had quietly engaged an outside accountant 6 weeks ago. He was still waiting on the full report. On a Thursday morning, the day before the Bugatti was scheduled for delivery, Gregory received a phone call from a number he didn't recognize. The man on the other end introduced himself as Marcus Cole, owner of Obsidian Prestige Rentals. Gregory listened. He did not interrupt. He asked 2 questions, can you document this? And how long has this been occurring? Marcus said yes to the first question and gave him the full timeline for the second. When the call ended, Gregory sat at his desk for several minutes, staring at nothing. Then he called his outside accountant and told her to accelerate the report. What Gregory didn't tell Marcus, what Marcus didn't yet know, was that the Crestview situation was more complicated than a partner misusing expense accounts. Derek Warren had also been positioning himself to buy out Gregory's stake using a loan he had arranged with a private lender, a loan that appeared, on paper, to be backed by assets Derek didn't actually own. Gregory had a board meeting scheduled for Tuesday. He had been planning to confront Derek then, with incomplete information, from a position of partial disadvantage. Marcus Cole's call had just changed that calculation entirely. Gregory leaned forward and opened the expense ledger he'd been studying for months. He began pulling specific line items. Vehicle rentals. Cross-referencing with the dates Marcus had given him. Every single one matched. $22,000 expensed as client entertainment, automotive experience. September. $19,500 expensed as executive transportation, client acquisition. November. The Bentley. The McLaren. The second Bentley. All of it there, buried in line items with vague descriptions, approved in expense batches Derek had submitted on Friday afternoons, a timing choice Gregory now recognized as deliberate. He picked up his phone and called his attorney. The call lasted 22 minutes. When it ended, Gregory had extended an invitation to his board chair for an emergency pre-meeting Monday morning. He also drafted and sent an internal memo to his HR director, marked confidential, describing a concern regarding expense account irregularities and requesting that all access to the corporate Amex account associated with Derek Warren's profile be flagged for review. The memo went out at 11:47 a.m. At 11:52, Derek Warren used the same corporate Amex to pay the remaining balance on the Bugatti rental. The card went through. Gregory had not yet suspended it, he was moving deliberately, not impulsively. But the charge was now documented, time-stamped, and flagged. And on Friday evening, when that Bugatti arrived at Marcus Cole's driveway, Gregory Osei would be watching his phone. Marcus Cole arrived home at 5:30 on Friday, earlier than usual. He told Diane he had wrapped up early. She seemed mildly pleased, the easy, uncomplicated pleasure of someone who did not feel threatened by her husband's presence because she did not believe he was capable of disrupting her plans. She was already dressed. He noticed this immediately. The dress was new, or at least he had not seen it before, a deep emerald green, elegant, the kind of thing she wore when she wanted to be looked at. Her hair was done. Her makeup careful. A perfume he didn't recognize drifted from her side of the bathroom. "Going somewhere tonight?" he asked, setting his bag down in the office doorway. "Girls' night," she said, touching an earring. "Sandra from my book club is celebrating a promotion. It might run late." "That's nice," he said. "Enjoy yourself." She glanced at him, the quick, instinctive assessment that people in complicated situations make, checking for signs that anything is different, anything is off. She saw nothing. He was the same Marcus he had always been. Shirt slightly wrinkled from the drive. Eyes mild, pleasant. Moving toward the kitchen to see what was in the refrigerator. She finished her earring and relaxed. At 6:55 p.m., Marcus was at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and his laptop open to a shipping analytics report when he heard the sound. It arrived before the car was even visible, a deep, impossibly refined mechanical presence, the kind of sound that didn't announce itself so much as simply exist, the way large machinery exists, the way weather exists. Then the Bugatti appeared at the end of his street and moved down it the way very expensive things move through ordinary spaces, slowly, completely, like a cathedral that had learned to drive. Marcus did not go to the window. He had cameras. He opened the Obsidian Prestige Fleet Monitoring app on his phone. The delivery driver, his driver, a young man named Theo who was meticulous and professional and had no idea whose house he was delivering to, executed the handoff on the driveway. He confirmed the mileage reading, verified the insurance documentation, obtained a signature on the delivery receipt, and drove away in the follow car. 11 minutes from arrival to completion. Marcus watched it all on his phone screen, the camera angles showing his own driveway as the Bugatti sat there in the late evening light, its midnight blue paint doing something strange and beautiful as the sky shifted. Then Diane's heels were on the stairs. He heard her stop at the front window. He heard her make a small sound, something between a laugh and a breath, the involuntary noise of someone who has just seen something that thrills them. He heard the front door open. He sat at the kitchen table and did not move. A car door. A voice he didn't recognize but whose sound fit perfectly the LinkedIn profile photo he had studied months ago, Derek Warren's voice, warm and practiced, the voice of a man who understood the emotional power of a well-timed grand gesture. "Surprise," the voice said. A pause. "You didn't," Diane said. "Happy anniversary," said Derek Warren. Marcus sat very still. "Happy anniversary." He noted the phrase, noted what it meant, noted what it confirmed. This was not a casual liaison. This had its own calendar, its own commemorations, its own private architecture of meaning. 14 months of corporate expense charges had built, in Derek Warren's mind, a relationship, one serious enough to rent a $3.4 million car for an anniversary. The front door closed. The Bugatti's engine, that impossible, orchestral engine, turned over, and the car moved away from his house. Marcus opened the March folder on his laptop. He added a new entry with the current timestamp. He noted the dress color, the stated alibi, the arrival time of the vehicle, the sound of Derek's voice, the exact words exchanged. Then he picked up his phone and called Raymond. "It's tonight," he said. "I have everything ready," Raymond said. "Do you want me to file Monday?" Marcus looked at the empty driveway on his camera feed. "No," he said. "One more thing first." He ended the call and dialed a second number. Gregory Osei answered immediately. "He just picked her up," Marcus said. "I know," Gregory said. "The card charge hit my monitoring alert 4 minutes ago." "Marcus, I have the board chair coming in Monday morning. I want to be clear about something." A pause. "What you've done, building this case, staying patient, I've been in business for 30 years. I've never seen anyone handle something like this with this kind of discipline." "Neither have I," Marcus said honestly. "I've never had to." A moment of quiet. "Whatever you need from my side," Gregory said. "Whatever the attorneys need to see, it's there." "Thank you," said Marcus. He hung up and returned to his laptop. He worked steadily for the next 3 hours. He ate a sandwich. He walked biscuit through the quiet neighborhood streets, the evening air cool and smelling of cut grass and distant rain, and he felt, not peace exactly, but the specific calm of someone who has completed the preparation and now simply waits for morning. At 1:12 a.m., headlights swept across his bedroom ceiling. He heard the front door. The careful, practiced quiet of someone trying not to wake a husband she still believed she had completely managed. He heard her in the bathroom. Then in the closet. Then the soft, familiar weight of her side of the bed accepting her presence. Within minutes, her breathing slowed and deepened. Marcus lay on his back in the dark and looked at the ceiling and thought about his grandfather's workshop, about dovetail joints, about the way a properly built piece of furniture simply held, without strain, without effort, because every cut had been exact. Tomorrow was almost here. Saturday arrived clean and still, the kind of early May morning that looks, from the inside of a warm house, like the world has been freshly made. Marcus had been awake since 5:30. He had showered, dressed, made coffee, and fed Biscuit, who thumped his tail against the kitchen floor with the uncomplicated enthusiasm of a creature unburdened by human complexity. Diane slept until 8:15. She came downstairs in her robe, hair loose, wearing the easy expression of a woman in the middle of a weekend she believed she controlled. "Morning," she said. "Morning." Marcus poured her a cup. "Sleep well?" She sat at the kitchen island. "Late night. How was Sandra's thing?" A small hesitation, so small that a less careful man would have missed it. "Fun," she said. "You know how those nights go." "I do," said Marcus. He set the coffee in front of her and sat down across the island. What happened next, Diane would later describe to her mother as the moment she understood she had fundamentally miscalculated the man she had been married to for 14 years. Marcus placed a folder on the kitchen island. It was a simple manila folder, labeled with nothing. He opened it to the first page and turned it to face her. He didn't say anything. He simply waited. She looked down. The first page was a printed screenshot of Derek Warren's Obsidian Prestige rental agreements, all 4 of them, stacked on a single page, each highlighted with the date, the vehicle, the corporate card number, and the client name. Derek Warren. Crestview Capital Partners. She looked up at him. He turned to the second page. Bank records, the joint account withdrawals, every one of them highlighted in yellow. The monthly totals, the running total. The account at the regional bank across town. Her face had gone still in the way that faces go still when the body understands something before the mind has finished processing it. Third page. The credit card statement. 14 months of charges. Fourth page. The hotel records. He turned each page slowly, giving her time to see each one, and said nothing. When he reached the end, he closed the folder. "Marcus," she started. "You don't need to explain it," he said. His voice was even. Not cold. Not cruel. Just clear. "I have the complete picture. I've had it for weeks. I wanted you to see it all at once, so you know exactly what I know." She was gripping her coffee mug with both hands, the way people grip things when they need to hold on to something solid. The car he picked you up in last night, Marcus said. The Bugatti. She blinked. That's mine, he said. I own Obsidian Prestige Rentals. I have for 6 years. Every car Derek Warren rented for the past 14 months came from my fleet. He's been charging it to his company account as business expenses, and I've been the one collecting payment. He watched the information arrive in layers. The surprise, then the recalculation, then the dawning, specific horror of a woman who suddenly understood the geometry of her situation. He doesn't know, Marcus said. I never told him. He booked through my company 4 times and never once knew whose cars he was renting. He's been paying me to date you. The kitchen was very quiet. Biscuit wandered in from the living room, glanced between them, and went back. Raymond will be in touch on Monday, Marcus said. Please make sure you have representation before then. It'll make the process cleaner. He stood, picked up his coffee, and walked to the back door. Marcus. He turned. She was looking at him the way you look at someone when you realize you never actually knew them, when all the assumptions you built an understanding on simply dissolve at once, and what's left is someone unfamiliar and, in that unfamiliarity, somehow larger than you thought. I'm sorry, she said. He held her gaze for a moment. I know, he said. And he walked out to the backyard, where the morning light was coming in low and gold through the maple trees, and he stood on the patio with his coffee and listened to the birds and the neighbor's lawnmower starting up 3 houses down, and let the Saturday morning do what Saturday mornings do. Monday arrived with the energy of a day that had been a long time coming. Raymond filed the divorce petition at 9:02 a.m. It was a comprehensive document, every financial irregularity, every unauthorized account, every hotel charge, every dollar of the $31,000 systematically extracted from their joint accounts, all of it attached as exhibits. The unauthorized credit card. The falsified joint account withdrawals. 14 months of documented evidence, clean and complete. Diane's attorney, a woman named Patricia Shen who was excellent and experienced and visibly troubled by the scope of what she was walking into, requested a 3-day extension to review the filings before entering a response. Raymond granted it. He and Marcus could afford to be patient. Across town, Gregory Osei's emergency board meeting ran for 4 hours. The outside accountant presented the full expense audit, $127,000 in improperly documented charges over 26 months, including the Obsidian Prestige Rentals, hotel charges that matched the dates and locations of the Crestview Entertainment records, and, the finding that landed heaviest, $34,000 in charges that Gregory's attorney characterized as prima facie evidence of personal enrichment through misuse of corporate resources. Derek Warren arrived at the board meeting 40 minutes late and sat down at the table without his attorney, which everyone in the room understood immediately as a serious miscalculation. Gregory laid the documentation in front of him page by page. He did not raise his voice. He did not use language that was dramatic or accusatory. He simply placed the records on the table and asked Derek, methodically, to explain them. Derek could not. By the end of the meeting, 3 things had been agreed upon. Derek Warren's signatory authority on all corporate accounts had been suspended pending a full review. The private lender loan Derek had arranged, the one backed by assets he didn't own, was being referred to the firm's legal counsel for potential notification to the lender. And Derek's equity stake in Crestview Capital Partners was subject to a forced buyout at a valuation that reflected the documented financial losses his conduct had caused. Derek Warren left the meeting with significantly less than he had arrived with. At 2:47 p.m., Marcus received an email from Celeste at Obsidian Prestige. The Bugatti had been returned Monday morning as scheduled, on time, full tank, no incidents. Theo had documented the vehicle's condition as excellent. Marcus read the email at his desk in his home office, the same desk where he had created the March folder 6 weeks ago, where he had sat in the dark and listened to crickets and decided to build a reckoning instead of making a scene. He typed back, "Thanks, Celeste. Schedule the next detail on the Bugatti for Thursday. Let's get it ready for the weekend." He closed his laptop. Biscuit came in from the hallway and put his chin on Marcus's knee, and Marcus scratched his ears for a long moment. Then he picked up his phone and called Jerome, his friend since college, the only person outside of Raymond who had always known the full scope of what Marcus had quietly built. "How are you doing?" Jerome asked. "I'm okay," Marcus said. And then, after a moment, "I think I'm genuinely okay." "Good," Jerome said. "You eat?" "Not yet." "Come over." Janelle made her thing. "The one with the short ribs." Marcus looked around his home office. At the filing cabinet. At the lamp, at the desk, at the quiet, organized life he had built inside these walls. "Yeah," he said. "I'll come over." He put on his jacket, snapped the leash on Biscuit's collar, and walked out into the afternoon. The Memphis Business Journal ran the story in October. Not about Marcus, he had declined to be interviewed 3 times. But about Obsidian Prestige Rentals. A journalist named Vivian Park had somehow tracked down the connection between Obsidian Prestige's growth trajectory and the quiet man behind it, and she had written something Marcus was not entirely comfortable with but had to admit was accurate. The headline read, "The Invisible Empire, How Marcus Cole Built a $4 million Luxury Fleet No One Knew About." The article mentioned, obliquely, that a recent high-profile divorce had brought Obsidian Prestige into the public eye. It did not name Diane. It did not name Derek. It noted, in a single sentence, that Marcus had declined to discuss his personal life. What the article did cover, in considerable depth, was what Obsidian Prestige had become. The 6th car in the fleet. A partnership with a hotel group downtown that sent executive clients to Marcus for airport transfers and event vehicles. A new full-time operations manager, Celeste, had been promoted, and she had hired a team. An annual revenue projection for the coming year that Raymond, when he saw the numbers, had described as the most pleasant legal problem I've encountered in 30 years. Marcus read the article on his phone while sitting in his new apartment, a corner unit on the 14th floor of a downtown building, floor-to-ceiling windows, natural light from 2 directions, no clutter, just the things he actually needed and a few things he genuinely wanted. A good espresso machine. A bookshelf he had taken his time with. A view of the city at night that he had not fully appreciated until he had a place where he could sit quietly and simply look at it. Biscuit was asleep on the rug. He set down his phone and picked up his coffee. The settlement had been completed in September. Patricia Shin had negotiated well given the circumstances, but the circumstances were what they were. The documented financial misconduct had narrowed Diane's leverage considerably. She received a fair share of the marital assets. Not a punishing settlement, Marcus had not asked for that. He had asked only for accuracy, for the numbers to reflect the truth. They did. Derek Warren's situation resolved with less elegance. His forced buyout from Crestview had been contentious and expensive. The private lender, upon being notified of the backing asset situation, had called in the full loan balance ahead of schedule. His personal finances, examined under the forensic pressure that contentious business dissolutions produce, had turned out to be considerably less stable than his cars and suits and confident stride had suggested. He had relocated. Marcus didn't know where. He didn't particularly need to. The invoice Marcus had submitted to Derek Warren, for the full, personal rate, penalty-applied cost of all 4 Obsidian Prestige rentals, had been paid in full, via wire transfer, 3 days before the business dissolution was finalized. No note. No communication. Just the payment, exact to the dollar, arriving in Obsidian Prestige's account at 4:17 on a Thursday afternoon. Marcus had looked at the notification on his phone and felt something that wasn't quite satisfaction but was in the neighborhood of it. The specific, quiet feeling of a properly built structure bearing weight exactly as intended. He had forwarded the confirmation to Raymond with a single line, "File closed." Now, sitting in his apartment with his dog asleep and the city spread out beyond his windows, Marcus Cole allowed himself something he had not allowed in a long time, the simple appreciation of where he was. He had built something real. Something that had survived precisely because he had protected it carefully, shared it sparingly, and refused to let anyone's dismissal of him alter what he knew about himself. His grandfather had been right. A man who shows you everything gives you everything you need to take it. But there was a corollary to that, Marcus understood now, one his grandfather hadn't needed to say explicitly, because Marcus had figured it out on his own. A man who builds in silence, builds in peace. And when the reckoning comes, it comes on his terms, in his time, complete and carefully made. He finished his coffee. He set the mug down on the table he had chosen himself, for his apartment that was his alone, in the life he was quietly, methodically rebuilding. Outside, the city was going about its evening business, restaurants filling up, traffic easing, lights coming on in windows across the skyline. Somewhere down there, a client was picking up a Rolls-Royce for a company dinner. Somewhere else, a young couple was taking their first ride in a Lamborghini, laughing at the sound of the engine, at the improbable fact of being exactly where they were. Marcus looked out at all of it. And the slow, certain smile that had started everything, the smile he had worn when the Bugatti pulled into his driveway and he understood, completely, what was happening, returned. He was good. He was genuinely, quietly, lastingly good. Marcus Cole never once raised his voice. He never made a scene. He never sent an angry text or showed up somewhere uninvited. He simply did what he had always done, he built something. Only this time, what he built wasn't a business. It was a reckoning. And every single person who had underestimated that quiet man in the concrete-colored Ford Fusion came to understand, too late, that boring and harmless are not the same thing. If this story resonated with you, like the video, subscribe, and drop a comment telling me what part hit you hardest. Was it the moment he approved the booking? The kitchen island? The invoice? Let me know, and I'll see you in the next story.